I walked into what I thought would be the best day of my career. After 2 years of leading the most profitable team at Stratimore Consulting, my promotion was finally happening. I checked my calendar 3 times that morning, expecting the announcement meeting. But when I arrived at the conference room, there was nothing. No announcement. No explanation. Just my coworkers avoiding eye contact. By lunch, my stomach was in knots. I marched straight to the new CEO's glass office, my heels clicking against the marble floor. I knocked once and pushed open the door. "Mr. Cole, I need to discuss my promotion." He didn't even look up from his laptop. "You want more money? Quit. We're not giving out raises right now. You're welcome to find a new job if you're that desperate." The words hit me like ice water. My face burned with embarrassment. This was supposed to be my moment. I'd worked 60-hour weeks, brought in 3 major clients, and saved the company over $2 million last quarter. I forced my voice to stay steady. "I see. Thank you for your time." I walked out quietly, but inside, something had shifted. This wasn't over. A month earlier, everything was different. Our beloved CEO, Robert Langley, had been like a father figure to our team. He believed in hard work paying off and always kept his promises. Then one Tuesday morning, we got the email. "Effective immediately, I'm retiring to spend time with family. Thank you for 10 wonderful years." It felt wrong. Robert was only 55 and had just signed a 5-year contract extension. The week before, he'd mentioned new expansion plans. His goodbye email was short and cold, nothing like his usual warm communication style. When I tried calling him, his phone went straight to voicemail. His assistant, Marie, looked confused when I asked about his sudden departure. "I don't know," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "He cleaned out his office at midnight on Monday. Security footage shows him leaving with just 1 box. He looked scared." HR gave us vague answers about personal reasons and family obligations. But Robert's wife had died 3 years ago, and his kids lived overseas. What family obligations could be so urgent? Something wasn't right. Robert wasn't the type to abandon his team without explanation. Someone had forced him out. But who? And why? Damen Cole arrived like a storm. Tall, confident, and smug. He called an all-hands meeting his first day. He wore an expensive suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Things are changing around here," he announced, scanning the room with cold eyes. "The old way of doing business is over. We're cutting the fat and increasing efficiency." Within 2 weeks, the office atmosphere completely changed. Bonuses were canceled. The employee appreciation budget vanished. The coffee machine that Robert had personally paid for was replaced with instant packets. When Sarah from marketing asked about the annual team retreat, Damen smirked. "Retreats are for companies that can afford to waste money. We're not running a summer camp here." During my first one-on-one meeting with him, I brought up concerns about team morale. His response chilled me. "Toughen up. This is business, not therapy. If people don't like it, they can leave. There are plenty of hungry candidates who'd take their place." I sat there stunned. Robert had built our company on treating employees like family. Damen was treating us like disposable resources. But the worst part? He seemed to enjoy watching people squirm. My promotion had been approved by Robert just days before he left. I'd seen the paperwork myself, a move to senior project director with a $40,000 raise. All it needed was the final signature. When I asked HR about it, Janet shuffled through papers nervously. "It's been paused for executive review," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Executive review?" But it was already approved. That was under the previous administration. Mr. Cole wants to review all pending promotions personally. I'd led the most profitable team for 2 quarters straight. My client retention rate was 97%. 3 companies had tried to poach me in the last 6 months. Offers I'd turned down out of loyalty to Stratimore. Now that loyalty felt foolish. I requested a meeting with Damen to discuss my promotion. His assistant scheduled it for 3 weeks later. When the day came, she rescheduled it again. And again. Finally, I'd had enough. I walked straight to his office during lunch, knowing he'd be there. I wasn't leaving without answers. That's when he told me to quit if I wanted more money. The humiliation burned, but something else burned brighter. Determination. After Damien's dismissal, I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, hands shaking. I'd never been spoken to like that in my professional life. The disrespect was crushing. But as the initial shock wore off, anger took its place. I wasn't some desperate employee begging for scraps. I was a top performer who'd earned every penny of that promotion. I called my friend Tessa from accounting. "Can you meet me for coffee? I need to talk." At the cafe across the street, I told her everything. Tessa's eyes widened as I described Damien's attitude. "That's horrible," she said, stirring her latte absently. "But honestly, I'm not surprised. I've been seeing some weird things in the books lately." "What kind of weird things?" She glanced around, then leaned closer. "Transfers that don't make sense, vendor payments to companies I can't find records for, and some of Damien's expense reports." She shook her head. "Let's just say he's living very well for someone who claims we can't afford raises." This was interesting. Maybe there was more to Damien's penny pinching than simple cost cutting. "Can you show me?" I asked. She hesitated. "It's risky, but I've been wanting to tell someone. This isn't right." The next evening, Tessa and I stayed late under the pretense of catching up on quarterly reports. Once the office emptied, she pulled up Damien's expense account on her computer. My jaw dropped. In just 1 month, he'd charged $30,000 to business development. The receipts showed helicopter rides, 5-star restaurants, and shopping sprees at luxury stores. "Look at this," Tessa pointed to a line item, $1,500 at a jewelry store, labeled client gifts. But I checked. We didn't meet with any clients that day. She scrolled down to show me transfer records. And these are the really weird ones. $50,000 to Miller Consulting Services. I called the number on file. It's disconnected. The address doesn't exist. Another transfer caught my eye. $60,000 to Strategic Advisory Group. When I Googled it, nothing came up. "How much total?" I asked. Tessa's fingers flew across the calculator. "In 6 weeks? Almost $300,000 in questionable transactions." My heart raced. While Damien was telling employees we couldn't afford raises, he was draining the company's accounts. But this was bigger than just padding his expense account. This looked like organized theft. "We need to document everything," I whispered. Tessa nodded grimly. "I've been printing copies, just in case." Over the next week, Tessa and I became unofficial investigators. We discovered that the mysterious vendor payments weren't random. They followed a pattern. Every Friday, like clockwork, money disappeared into shell companies. The amounts were getting bigger, too. What started as $20,000 transfers had grown to $80,000 per week. "It's like they're testing how much they can steal without triggering automatic alerts," Tessa observed. But the most disturbing discovery came when I cross-referenced the timing of these transfers with Robert's departure. The first questionable payment was dated just 3 days after Robert announced his retirement. I tried calling Robert again, but his phone was still going to voicemail. His LinkedIn profile had been deactivated. It was like he'd vanished from the earth. Then I remembered Marie, his former assistant. She might know how to reach him. I found her in the employee break room, looking miserable. She'd been demoted to general administrative duties after Robert left. "Marie, I need to ask you something confidential," I said quietly. "Do you have any way to contact Robert?" She looked around nervously, then nodded. "He gave me an emergency email address, said to only use it if something terrible happened to the company." I think something terrible was happening. That night, I crafted a careful email to Robert's emergency address. I didn't mention the financial irregularities. Emails could be monitored. Instead, I wrote about missing his leadership and asked if we could talk. He responded within hours. "Call me tomorrow at 3 p.m. Use this number. Come alone." The next afternoon, I drove to a quiet park and dialed the number with shaking hands. "Hello." Robert's voice was strained, tired. "Robert, it's me. Thank you for—" "Don't use my name on this call," he interrupted. "And don't tell anyone we spoke. Are you somewhere private?" "Yes. What's going on? Why did you really leave?" A long pause. "I didn't have a choice. They forced me out." "Who's they?" "The new CEO's uncle sits on our board. He came to me with photos, doctored photos, of me supposedly meeting with competitors. Said if I didn't resign quietly, they'd release them and destroy my reputation. They also threatened to bankrupt the company and fire everyone." My blood ran cold. "So you left to protect us?" "I thought I was. But now I'm hearing things, money disappearing, employee morale crashing. I sacrificed my career for nothing. It's worse than you know, I whispered, then told him about the transfers, the shell companies, the systematic theft. After a long silence, he spoke. That bastard played me. He forced me out so they could loot the company without interference. Robert's revelation changed everything. This wasn't just about my promotion anymore. It was about saving our company and protecting my coworkers' jobs. What can we do? I asked. Nothing, Robert said firmly. These people are dangerous. They have board connections and legal resources. You're just one employee. Walk away before they destroy you too. But I couldn't walk away. While Damien was stealing hundreds of thousands, my coworkers were getting their benefits cut. Good people were struggling while he bought jewelry and took helicopter rides. You sacrificed yourself to save us, I told Robert. Let me finish what you started. It's too risky. I have help. Someone in accounting who's been tracking the irregularities. And I have access to executive meetings. We can expose this. Robert was quiet for a long moment. If you're serious about this, you need to be smarter than I was. Document everything. Create multiple backup copies. And most importantly, don't trust anyone completely. If there's one corrupt board member, there might be more. His words sent chills down my spine. How deep did this conspiracy go? Start by figuring out exactly who's involved, Robert continued. The uncle's name is Marcus Cole. He's been on the board for 8 years, but watch out for others who might be in on it. The call ended with Robert promising to help from the shadows, but warning me to be extremely careful. Armed with Robert's information, I spent the weekend researching our board members. Stratimore had 7 total, 3 longtime members who'd helped Robert build the company and 4 newer additions who'd joined in the last few years. Marcus Cole, Damien's uncle, was one of the newer members. He'd invested heavily in the company right before joining the board. The timing seemed suspicious now. 2 other newer board members caught my attention. Patricia Vance and Dr. Richard Sterling. Both had financial backgrounds and sat on the audit committee, the perfect position to hide irregularities. I created a timeline, mapping the suspicious transfers against board meeting dates. The pattern was clear. Major transfers always happened right after board meetings, as if they were being approved in secret sessions. On Monday, I shared my findings with Tessa. Her face went pale as she studied my charts. If 4 board members are involved, they have majority control, she whispered. They could vote out the honest members if they wanted. That's when the full scope hit me. This wasn't just theft. It was a complete takeover. They'd forced out Robert, installed Damien as their puppet, and were systematically draining the company before anyone could stop them. But they'd made one mistake. They'd underestimated a senior project director who refused to quit. I knew we needed more concrete evidence before making any accusations. Over the next 2 weeks, Tessa and I developed a careful system. She would flag unusual transactions and print copies after hours. I would document any suspicious behavior for management. The breakthrough came during a board meeting I was asked to attend to present quarterly numbers. As I entered the conference room, I heard Marcus Cole speaking quietly to Patricia Vance. Phase 3 starts next month. Once we clear out the remaining accounts, we trigger the bankruptcy filing and disappear. They stopped talking when they saw me. But I'd heard enough. They weren't just stealing. They were planning to destroy the entire company. During my presentation, I watched their faces carefully. Marcus, Patricia, and Dr. Sterling all seemed bored, checking their phones and whispering to each other. But the 3 longtime board members, Sarah Chen, David Martinez, and Jennifer Walsh, were engaged and asking thoughtful questions. After the meeting, Jennifer Walsh pulled me aside. Excellent presentation. Your team's performance is remarkable, especially considering the current challenges. The way she said challenges made me think she suspected something too. Thank you, I replied carefully. I believe in fighting for this company. She studied my face. So do I. More than you might realize. Was she hinting that she knew about the corruption, or was I reading too much into her words? That evening, I called Robert and told him about the conversation I'd overheard. Bankruptcy filing? His voice was tight with anger. They're not just stealing money, they're planning to kill the company entirely. What would happen if they filed for bankruptcy? They'd liquidate all assets, pay themselves as creditors first, and leave employees with nothing. Pensions, 401k matching, final paychecks, all gone. 300 employees would lose everything while the conspirators walked away rich. We have to stop them, I said. Agreed, but we need ironclad proof, and we need allies. You mentioned Jennifer Walsh seemed suspicious of something? Maybe. She made a comment about challenges that felt significant. Jennifer's been with the company since the beginning. If anyone would stand up to corruption, it's her. But approach her carefully. If you're wrong, she could warn the others. I decided to test the waters by scheduling a meeting with Jennifer about company morale concerns. If she was truly loyal to the company, she'd want to hear about employees' struggles. But first, I needed to gather more evidence. Tessa had mentioned seeing night security footage of people accessing the building after hours. If the corrupt board members were meeting secretly, there might be video proof. Time to get creative. Getting access to security footage required help from someone I'd never expected. Jake from IT. He'd been laid off the previous week as part of Damien's efficiency improvements, but still had his access card. I met him for coffee and carefully explained that I suspected financial irregularities. Jake had always been loyal to Robert and was furious about his termination. I've been wondering why they'd fire their best IT security specialist right before implementing new financial systems, he said grimly. Now it makes sense. Jake agreed to help, but warned me to be extremely careful. If they catch you, this becomes a career-ending scandal. Make sure you have rock-solid evidence before you make any moves. That weekend, Jake used his access to pull security footage from the last month. What we found was damning. Marcus Cole, Patricia Vance, and Dr. Sterling meeting in the conference room every Sunday evening, meetings that weren't on any official calendar. During one of these secret meetings, security cameras caught them reviewing documents and making phone calls. Jake enhanced the audio, and we could hear fragments of conversation about transfer schedules and offshore accounts. But the smoking gun came from footage of Damien himself, arriving at the building at midnight with a briefcase and leaving 30 minutes later with the same briefcase, presumably stuffed with cash. We had them. The question now was what to do with this evidence. I spent a sleepless night weighing my options. Going to the police felt premature. Corporate financial crimes were complex, and we needed more documentation. Going to the honest board members carried risks if I'd misjudged who to trust. Then I remembered something Robert had said. Create multiple backup copies. I spent the entire next day creating a comprehensive evidence file. Financial records, security footage, email trails, phone records that Tessa had access to. Everything organized chronologically with clear summaries. I made 5 copies, one for myself, one for Tessa, one hidden at home, one in a safety deposit box, and one that I mailed to my sister with instructions to open it only if something happened to me. That Tuesday, I finally requested a private meeting with Jennifer Walsh. Her assistant scheduled it for Thursday afternoon at Jennifer's law office downtown. Neutral territory. When I arrived, Jennifer looked concerned. You mentioned employee morale issues. Is it really that bad? I took a deep breath. It's worse than bad. I believe our company is being systematically looted by corrupt board members, and I have proof. Jennifer's face went white. That's a very serious accusation. I know. That's why I'm bringing it to you first. I spent the next hour walking her through everything. The suspicious transfers, the shell companies, the secret meetings, the security footage. By the end, Jennifer was furious. I knew something was wrong, Jennifer said, pacing her office. Marcus has been pushing for votes on issues he'd never cared about before, and those Sunday evening emergency sessions that I was never invited to. She turned to face me. But this is bigger than I imagined. We're not just talking about theft. This is conspiracy to defraud. Jennifer explained that she, Sarah Chen, and David Martinez had been increasingly suspicious of the newer board members, but hadn't had concrete proof. The 3 of us have been meeting privately to discuss our concerns, she admitted. We've been documenting voting irregularities and questionable decisions, but we didn't realize the scope of the financial theft. She studied my evidence file carefully. This is excellent work, but we need more. Corporate fraud cases require overwhelming proof. Defense lawyers will attack every inconsistency. What do you recommend? We need them on record. Audio recordings of them discussing the scheme, bank records showing where the money went, and most importantly, we need to catch them in the act. Jennifer pulled out her phone. I'm calling Sarah and David. We need an emergency meeting of the honest board members. Tonight. As she dialed, my heart raced. This was really happening. We were going to take down the conspiracy. But I also felt a chill of fear. If they discovered our plan before we could execute it, we'd all be destroyed. That evening, I met Jennifer, Sarah Chen, and David Martinez in Jennifer's law office. The three longtime board members were shocked by the evidence, but determined to act. Robert was forced out to clear the path for this theft. Sarah said angrily, "We all suspected the photos were fake, but we couldn't prove it." David studied the security footage. These Sunday meetings explain why they've been so confident in board votes. They're coordinating their positions in advance. Jennifer laid out our strategy. We need to trigger an emergency board meeting and confront them with evidence. But first, we need them to incriminate themselves on record. How? I asked. Sarah is going to pretend she's interested in joining their scheme, Jennifer explained. She'll wear a wire and try to get them to admit what they're doing. It was risky, but Sarah volunteered immediately. I've had enough of watching them destroy Robert's company. We spent 2 hours planning every detail. Sarah would approach Marcus Cole tomorrow, claiming she'd discovered some irregularities and wanted to discuss them privately. If he tried to recruit her into the conspiracy, we'd have them. I left that meeting feeling hopeful for the first time in weeks. We had a real plan to expose the corruption and save the company. But as I drove home, I noticed a black sedan following me. When I turned left, it turned left. When I sped up, it sped up. Someone was watching us. The next morning, I arrived at work to find Damien waiting in my office. My blood went cold. Had they discovered our investigation? We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. I forced my voice to stay steady. Of course. What can I help you with? There have been some concerns about your recent activities, late nights, unusual computer access, meetings with people outside your department. My heart pounded, but I kept my expression neutral. I've been working on quarterly reports. They require coordination with multiple departments. Damien's eyes narrowed. Right. Well, just so you know, we take information security very seriously here. Employees who access systems beyond their authorization level face immediate termination. The threat was clear. They were watching me, and they suspected I was investigating them. I understand, I replied calmly. I only access systems necessary for my job functions. After Damien left, I texted Jennifer immediately. They're suspicious. We need to move fast. Her response was immediate. Sarah's meeting Marcus in an hour. Stay calm and act normal. But acting normal felt impossible when I knew they were watching my every move. I spent the day doing routine work, avoiding any behavior that might seem suspicious. At lunch, Tessa approached me nervously. I'd flagged my computer access last night. They're monitoring everything. Our investigation was in serious danger. That afternoon, Sarah Chen met with Marcus Cole in his private office. Thanks to Jennifer's legal connections, Sarah was wearing a professional-grade recording device. According to the plan, Sarah would express concerns about the company's financial irregularities and gauge Marcus's response. If he was innocent, he'd share her concerns. If he was guilty, he might try to recruit her. An hour later, Sarah called Jennifer with shocking news. Not only had Marcus admitted to the embezzlement scheme, he'd offered Sarah a cut of the profits. He told me they're planning to drain another $2 million over the next month, then trigger bankruptcy proceedings, Sarah reported. He said the three of us could disappear with enough money to retire comfortably. But the conversation had also revealed something terrifying. They knew about our investigation. Marcus mentioned that certain employees were asking too many questions, Sarah continued. He said they'd handle the problem soon. Jennifer's voice was grim when she called me. We have enough evidence to expose them, but we're out of time. They're planning to make their move tomorrow night. What kind of move? Marcus mentioned framing you for the embezzlement. They're going to plant evidence suggesting you created the shell companies and stole the money yourself. My worst fears were coming true. Not only were they stealing millions, they were going to destroy my career and possibly send me to prison. The frame-up happened exactly as Jennifer had warned. The next morning, I was called to an emergency board meeting. When I arrived, Damien was waiting with a smug expression and a folder full of documents. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the assembled board members, "we've discovered the source of our recent financial irregularities." He slid the folder across the table. Inside were bank statements, email printouts, and transfer authorizations, all with my forged signature. "Our investigation shows that Ms. Martinez here created multiple shell companies and diverted over $400,000 for personal use," Damien continued. "When I denied her promotion request, she apparently decided to give herself a raise." I stared at the documents in shock. They were sophisticated forgeries, complete with fake email chains showing me communicating with offshore banks. Marcus Cole spoke up, his voice dripping with false disappointment. "This is deeply troubling. We trusted you with sensitive financial information." "These documents are fabricated," I said firmly. "I've never seen these shell companies before, and I certainly didn't create them." Patricia Vance shook her head sadly. "The evidence is quite compelling. The timing aligns perfectly with your promotion denial." I looked around the table desperately. Jennifer, Sarah, and David sat silently, playing their roles perfectly. They couldn't reveal our investigation yet. We needed the corrupt board members to feel confident. But watching them frame me for their crimes was agonizing. Security escorted me from the building 20 minutes later. Damien had called it immediate termination for cause, which meant no severance, no references, and a permanent mark on my record. Tessa watched from her cubicle with tears in her eyes as I packed my personal items. I managed to whisper, "Stay strong," as I passed her desk. In the parking garage, Jennifer was waiting by her car. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "Angry, but okay. Did you get everything you needed?" "More than enough. Sarah's recording of Marcus is devastating. Combined with your evidence and their attempted frame-up, we have an ironclad case." "When do we move?" "Tomorrow morning. The three of us are calling an emergency board meeting with SEC investigators present. We're also notifying the FBI's white-collar crime division." I felt a surge of satisfaction. They thought they'd won by framing and firing me. But in reality, they just handed us the final piece of evidence we needed. Proof of their willingness to destroy innocent people. That evening, I drove to a small apartment I'd rented under a false name, Jennifer's idea for security. As I unpacked my boxes, I thought about Robert's sacrifice and all the employees whose jobs hung in the balance. Tomorrow, we'd finally get justice. But first, I had one more card to play, the single email that would change everything. At midnight, I sat down at my laptop and composed the most important email of my career. The recipient list included every major client, all company employees, and several business journalists who covered corporate fraud. The subject line was simple: the truth about Stratimore Consulting. In the email, I attached the complete evidence file: security footage, financial records, recordings of the corrupt board members, and documentation of the frame-up attempt. The most powerful part was my personal statement. Today I was fired for allegedly stealing money from Stratimore Consulting. In reality, I was fired for discovering that 4 board members have embezzled over $800,000 while planning to bankrupt the company. The attached evidence proves my innocence and their guilt. I scheduled the email to send at 6 a.m., right before the emergency board meeting. Then I called Robert. "It's done. Tomorrow morning, everyone will know the truth." "Are you sure you want to do this? Once you send that email, there's no going back." "I'm sure. They destroyed your career and tried to destroy mine. It's time for consequences." At 6 a.m. sharp, my email landed in hundreds of inboxes simultaneously. By 6:30, my phone was ringing nonstop. By 7 a.m., the story was trending on business news websites. The emergency board meeting was supposed to start at 9 a.m., but by 8:30, the parking lot was full of news vans and FBI agents. Marcus Cole tried to flee when he saw the media circus, but federal agents were waiting for him. Inside the boardroom, chaos erupted. The 3 corrupt board members were arrested on site. Damien was found trying to delete files from his computer. The honest board members held an emergency vote and immediately terminated Damien's employment. They also voted to invite Robert back as interim CEO. At 2 p.m., Robert called me with unexpected news. The board wants to meet with you. They're impressed by your investigation and how you handled this crisis. I'm not sure I want to come back after everything that happened. Just hear them out. I think you'll be surprised. The boardroom was packed with employees and media. As I entered, the entire room erupted in applause. I stood there stunned as everyone gave me a standing ovation. Sarah Chen stepped forward with a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Stratimore's new Chief Executive Officer, Miss Martinez. My jaw dropped. They were offering me the CEO position? Robert appeared beside me, grinning widely. The board voted unanimously. They said anyone brave enough to take on a conspiracy and smart enough to document everything deserved to lead this company. The crowd cheered louder. Tessa was crying happy tears in the front row. I don't know what to say, I stammered into the microphone. Say yes, someone shouted from the back. I looked around the room at all the faces, people whose jobs I'd helped save. Yes, I said firmly. I accept. The cheering was deafening. 6 weeks ago, I was begging for a promotion. Now I was running the entire company. 3 months later, Stratimore was stronger than ever. We'd recovered the stolen money and landed 5 new major clients, impressed by our integrity during the crisis. Marcus Cole, Patricia Vance, and Dr. Sterling were sentenced to federal prison for conspiracy to commit fraud. Damien received 3 years, but lost everything. His reputation, his assets, and his freedom. I promoted Tessa to finance director and hired Jake back as chief information security officer with a substantial raise. The company culture transformed completely. Instead of fear and competition, we built an environment based on transparency and mutual respect. Employee satisfaction scores reached all-time highs. Robert stayed on as chairman, providing guidance while letting me lead operations. You've exceeded every expectation, he told me. This company is in better hands than it's ever been. The most satisfying moment came when Forbes featured me on their cover. The Whistleblower CEO, How One Woman's Courage Saved 300 Jobs. In the interview, I was asked what advice I'd give to other employees facing corruption. Document everything. Find allies you trust, and never underestimate the power of doing what's right. Today, as I sit in the CEO office, I think about how dramatically my life changed in just a few months. I went from being dismissed and humiliated to leading one of the most respected consulting firms in the city. The irony isn't lost on me. Damien told me to quit if I wanted more money. Instead, I ended up with the highest salary and the power to ensure no employee would ever be treated like I was. We've implemented new policies, transparent promotion processes, anonymous reporting systems, and strict oversight of executive expenses. Every employee knows they can speak up without fear. Last week, a young analyst approached me with concerns about a client's billing practices. Instead of dismissing her, I thanked her and immediately investigated. My assistant buzzed the intercom. Your 3 p.m. is here. The documentary crew from Business Weekly. They were filming a piece about corporate whistleblowing. As I prepared for the interview, I thought about all the people who'd supported my decision to fight back. Justice isn't just about punishing wrongdoing, it's about building something better from the ashes.